on Second Life, and I appreciate Carmeletta and Kit coming in today. And I think, does everybody know Carmeletta's with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Kit is over in the Career Development Center and also teaches English, I believe. So, and we've got Davy Jones and Saul Epstein and Marcia Karch and Zach Zeringer, all from the Ed Tech Center. And so we're going to do a little presentation on some projects that have been done in Second Life.
I'll start by asking if an introduction to what Second Life is helpful, or if our audience is mostly familiar with the concept.
I am now. I wasn't a few months ago.
Basically, Second Life is a worldwide online virtual reality platform for whatever you can think of, pretty much. There are a lot of platforms like World of Warcraft that are a specific kind of game. Users create accounts and enter into in order to play that game. Second Life is different in that there's no defined purpose or structure for entering into it, other than to be there and see what you can do as it stands and what you might like to build for others to do. The other hallmark of Second Life, of course, is that almost all the content in it was created by its users rather than by the company that made it possible. So the college has an island in Second Life and has for several years, and we use it to explore possible ways that it can be used for credit instruction and other aspects of the college's mission. And as we find those, we look into them further. Can you see the screen okay? From this angle, it looks almost invisible, but I mean from my angle. Okay. So this is our sort of virtual courtyard that's modeled on the actual courtyard. So we've got the fountain here, and at the other end we have the Heron Bell, and that's sort of the center of the island. It's been set up that way for some time as sort of the stable core of things. We also have off to one side, we've had for a while now, use updating. Oh, and here's another friendly resident here. So we can wave.
Zaya Masala. In a dress. So
You know, when I come on
does that mean their
campus,
sound?
Yeah, that was, the speaker thing was turned on.
Oh, you turned it off?
Yeah, because we can all hear us already in the room.
Oh.
I didn't want to make that feedback loop, but.
Oh, I thought it was something that you had, the avatar.
Now see when I've got it turned on, you see how it's making that noise while I'm speaking. It's because.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and if sound were turned on, I wouldn't hear that, but I'm turned on.
This is a gallery of student work. It's work from a graphic design class, but it's already several years past work, and at some point we should get probably a new batch to put in. But if you ever pass through the right hallway in LIB on the way to CLB on the 3rd floor, they have display cases that contain things like this. But the two newest things that we thought we'd show you today, and I'll fly over there to save some time. This is still a work in progress, but there are significant pieces that we can show. It's a collection of visualizations of Toni Morrison novels. And we were put up to working on this, which was a great,
put up to.
it was a great use
Invited.
of the platform, yes. A great use of the platform that we had a lot of. This was a really great experience to do, and I look forward to the time, having the time to finish more of these pieces. But Kit and Carmeletta asked us, and a professor from KU, Giselle Anatole, asked us to build these. And we've asked Kit and Carmeletta to come too and tell us about the idea and what it is that we built for them. So I can point out to start just that we have here a copy of the Morrison Foundation's bench by the side of the road monuments that are being installed in various places around the world, and that will act as sort of the welcome center for the whole project. So, which of you would like to start?
Okay, since she didn't say. The bench actually comes from part of a speech by Morrison, and that there needs to be a bench by the side of the road where people can sit and talk. So we thought that for the entrance there would be some kind of, I think at first we thought we would have an arch or something that people would go through and touch, but then the bench. And when we were at the conference, at the Morrison conference, they actually did an installation of a bench there in Paris. And but the feeling I think that people have just by having the bench, because the neighborhood where they installed it was pretty urban, lots of fences. Of course, there's lots of high rises, but the neighborhood folk all came out, and it's a spot where people feel welcome. But for the larger project, we had separate books, and I did Song of Solomon, and that's the tree, and Kid did Tar Baby, and that's her house on the hill.
The greenhouse.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back a couple of years ago. I took a Toni Morrison class at KU, and the professor, Giselle Anatole, is very progressive and wanted to find a new way to engage students in literature. So I jumped on the Second Life option bandwagon because I had been involved for several years with Second Life here, and we thought that JCCC might be able to use our work, and invited Carmeletta and her involvement with women's studies and African American studies to join in. And what we have, I think, is a very exciting project. We each took one of the books that Toni Morrison has written, and through really deep study of the novel, came up with places that represent different themes and different content. And we're hoping that when it's finished, that this will be a place that professors and high school teachers can bring members of their class or themselves to experience literature in a three-dimensional kind of way. And maybe Saul can show kind of how the avatars, thus the students, can interact with the different images that these books that represent these novels.
Yeah, what was interesting, I think, at the conference is that on the shuttle from the airport into her hotel, Giselle, some people were like attacking her about Second Life and how it's just gamemanship and it's not really a way to teach literary theory. And so she said, you know, we've got some people who are really not with us on this, and I'm going like, okay, we can handle that. That is not a problem. And when it was over, you know, we had won them all over. They all saw that this is a good device. And Davey was my director. I actually talked about these folks by name at the conference because it was amazing. I read the book. I gave him a copy of The Family Tree They used Bowling Family Systems theory and told him that we had to turn it upside down. So, you know, so right away it's more difficult than normally it would be. Like the car is Macon Dead's Packard and the Peacock. So all of these things are not just there to make it pretty, but they have some impact on the story. And in Song of Solomon, Macon Dead, Milkman, is Macon Dead the Third, called Milkman. He goes on the search for gold nuggets. He thinks that there's some gold hid in a cave. And what he actually finds is his family and who he is. So we chose gold and the gold bags as the symbol for all of the things that you find in the story. And it was also important because, as Kit said, we really wanted it not just to be college level, but we wanted anybody who walked into the site to be able to understand what was going on. So we did basic things too, like you see American Indians. Part of the family was American Indian. The other part were flying Africans. And then we got really, really creative with ours. And we attached music. Susan and Kay helped me find music to fit each one of these so that as you climb up the tree, if you hit on the gold nugget, then it opens and you get a box that explains what it is. So you get that history and the flying Africans, the myth of the flying Africans, and how Solomon first came into the story. And it's important because when you read the book, there's a place that says the milkman lost all interest in himself when he realized he couldn't fly. And then he comes to realize as he makes this journey that he is part of the flying Africans. So we have that there, and then we have, I don't know what College Lane is, but
That's him.
Oh, that's you. You're College Lane. Okay.
It's the account that owns the island.
And the American Indians. Hetty, the woman who took him in, was American Indian. And it was really interesting for her because she didn't want black kids and red kids to play with each other. And so, but then her daughter ends up marrying the kid that she took in. So we have all of this information in those little bags. And so as you climb, you get more. Can you get music?
Well, we don't seem to have it.
It's playing right now.
Yeah, it played the first one. I don't know if it's the projector. In which case, it's just a matter of knowing how to make the system work. And the volume's up.
Oh, shoot.
So.
But we were worried going over that there may be issues with getting to Second Life, and there were. So we ended up using the flash drives that Marcia and Davey and Saul had made for us. We used those, and then their projector didn't work.
It wasn't there.
Yeah, so we had to, they just looked at the screen on the laptop to see this. And on the movie that we had on our flash drives, you couldn't get to music anyway, so. But like the Bible, this is interactive. The children in this book, they were named by, when they were born, they would just put a finger on the Bible, and wherever it stopped, that's how the children would be named. Well, on this site, then, you can play that. That game, you can put your finger on the Bible, and you get a name. So it is really cool. Like Pilate, who's actually the good person, the best-hearted person in the book, she got her name because that's where her father's finger landed, and he wouldn't change the tradition. But
Even though the nurse said, you don't want to name your daughter Pilate,
Yeah.
that's not a good name in the Bible, and he goes, I don't care, that's
yeah,
tradition.
he's going like, you're talking about a steamship pilot? He's going like, no, I'm talking about a Jesus killing pilot. You don't want to do that. And he's going like, that's where the finger lies. And he couldn't read or write, but he was able to print her name on a piece of paper. And then that's the only word he'd ever written. So she folds that paper up later when the father gets killed and puts it in an earring. And she wears this earring until she dies. And then the flying Africans, who by then are represented by birds, come and pick that out. So it's real, and all of this is on this tree. But you know, you can see the note cards that give you all the information. Uncle Billy is actually a minor character in the book, but he was important because we're looking at family structure. And Uncle Billy helped to raise Guitar, who is the functional brother for Milkman. No Mercy Hospital, not Dr. Street. When the people moved to this town, they would write their relatives, and when it would come back, they would say, just write us a Dr. Street. And then the post office got upset, said, this is not Dr. Street. Quit telling people to write you a Dr. Street. So then they told folks, this is not Dr. Street, so write me a not Dr. Street. No Mercy Hospitals, because black folk couldn't go there, and Milkman was actually the first black person to be born there. But if you click on the gold bag, it gives you that history. Sonny's Shop, where his father worked. And that was the name on it. Nobody knew what kind of work Sonny did in the shop, but he knew that nobody would pay attention if they changed the name, so they kept it the same. So we have all of these characters, Reba the Cave, Mary's Place is a bar where everybody felt equal, Darling Street, Guitar's Family. And for Guitar's Family, we used different colors because they were the family that didn't really come to full fruition. They were the ones who were the weak part. His mother ran off, his father, no, his mother was an alcoholic, and the father, after the father ran off, and the uncle and the grandmother tried to raise them. So their colors, you can't really tell it on here, but Davy made their color different from the other ones. The other ones are a rich dark green, and they're a lighter, more, yeah, thickly green. So the visual part of it too tells a story, even if you don't go into each one of those. And Mrs. Baines, who she was. Guitar's mother and father, they're there, but they're not as big a gold bag as the other, and their leaf color is different. And then you just climb all the way up until he actually realizes who he is and his family, and who Henry Porter is one of the 7 days. So if you click on him, you get that note card on the days, and how they came together was to try to balance out racial injustice. So if a black person were murdered on Tuesday, that they would murder a white person on Tuesday. So there could only be 7 of them. But Henry Porter is there, and how you know, you could only do this so long, and it would but as you climb up the tree, you see all of these factors that go into helping to make him who he is. Can they see my avatar? She has hips. I gave her hips. She's real cute. That's okay. It would be a problem. But the tree, and the tree itself, you know, it's that walk up. You know, it's a spiral tree. We looked at a couple of examples when we had like tree limbs going out. But with the spiral, you actually get to make the trip up.
It's very creative tree.
Yeah.
I like the tree, Davey.
Yeah, everybody did.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I tried to take credit for it, it just wouldn't come out. Like, I did the note cards, but Davey did all the design. But it's fun, you know, it's fun. So even high school and younger people would, you know, get into it and just have fun, just climbing around the island, and the peacock, and the packer. It's hers. The play on words, I think, comes through in this too. And then,
Oh, Marcia,
look at you, got your best on. She's all dressed up.
I like it too because it reminds me of Mist and Ribbon. I feel like
Reminds you of what?
there's some computer games called Mist and Ribbon, and that's a third game I think. It makes me think of that now. the whole thing, I mean,
Yeah, and the peacock is just so, and when people first see it, you know, it's like, oh, that's cute, and then they realize that it's actually relevant to the novel and the car. I like the way the car looks, I just like it sitting there, but, you know, it's also important that he would put his kids in the car on Sunday and drive them around to show them off because they're symbols of ownership. And his whole life after his father's murder, you know, just centers on owning things, and which is part of Milkman's problem.
Davey, was there anything you wanted to say about the tree or walk around and show?
I'm a genius, that's all you have to say.
I
I'm a
think he was
genius.
explained pretty good.
Okay.
The tree gives you access to the parts of the story. I don't know.
Anything about it, what you had to do to make it work or discover it along the way? Or?
I don't know if I have anything interesting to say.
Oh.
I can explain it, but it's probably not that interesting.
Okay.
Well, had you read Toni Morrison really before you started this project?
No, I got a copy of the book and I read like maybe a third of it, but I just went from Carmeletta's clues and input and tried to bring around something that would work.
Yeah, and then he was having, you know, because I read the story for plot development and stuff and not for critical analysis, I think we made a really good team because he would say, but what about right here when this happens? And then I'd have to rethink something different because I don't know how to put this together or any structure. And I'm like, well, yeah, but in the book. Well, in the book it's a little different, a lot different from what happens here. So that was really good. And especially after you read like summaries of who the characters were, you know, and then it got fun to talk about together
It was a lot
about
of
this
fun.
development.
Good. I think the other,
Kids on
So-
the Hill, right?
yeah, which is.
This one on the right, though, is Toni Morrison's first book, Bluest Tie. And Marzia worked on that one with Dr. Anatole.
And it's probably the next, well, the other finished piece. So if Marzia would like to talk about that.
Sure. And that's actually why I changed clothes. Yeah, so in Second Life you can look like whatever you want to look like. So most people, you know, pick nice fancy dresses. So in the Bluest Eye, one of the continuing themes is the main character is considered to be culturally ugly by everyone around her, even though she's not actually an ugly person. It's an assumed ugliness. So one of the things I added here is, there we go, underneath the Christmas tree, which in the book the house is decorated with an abandoned Christmas tree that's been there for ages, you know, kind of symbolic of hopes and dreams that never come through, I guess. And you can click on that,
Looks like she's shooting it.
yeah, and you can yeah, that's what it looks like when you're clicking on something, and you can click on that and click on the option to copy in there, and then it will put that on. So then you can look more like the protagonist of the story. In the story, the protagonist is actually really young, and that doesn't work well with Second Life, so that doesn't happen here. But and then it's your choice as to whether or not you actually get blue eyes, because that's kind of vague in the book.
Yeah, her images of beauty are blue eyes and blonde hair, and so she wants that.
Yeah, so what I tried to do is go by the description in the book, but make somebody that was not ugly, in spite of a description of features that could be seen, you know, like a unibrow, and you know. But I was thinking, you know, Frida Kahlo's got one of those, and she's not ugly.
catch me for recipes?
Yeah, there's some other goodies along here.
Walk right through the wall.
Yeah, that
One
was.
of the walls.
Which was good, because I could never get back through the doors.
Oh, okay.
But you can't see the doors from the inside. so-
Oh.
Yeah, sorry about that. Walk back in. Yeah, you can walk through walls. It was easier with the small space there. You might want to look at the house and not me, because I'm.
Is this the one with the second story, or yours is the second?
No. No, this is, this isn't.
This has a second story.
There's
There's a
nothing in
roof,
it.
sort of.
It's just,
Oh.
yeah, roofish.
There were some steps in one.
Yeah.
That's the other house. It's not finished.
Yeah, so inside there on the wall, there's contrasting images of and during the times when the book was set of, you know, white people and black people and comparing, contrasting glorified life and not so glorified life, and pictures of the white people there are glowing. These were Depression era photos that were taken as part of the, you know, the iconic 1920s picture of the poor woman who's holding her children, that was taken in as part of I can't remember, it was some government survey of yeah, and they had bunches of photos, so I used those, and they were really good comparison contrast. A lot of these glorious white photos are advertising cotton stockings. They were trying to promote the cotton industry. And there's a recipe for dandelions somewhere hidden in there. There's a couple things that are hidden there.
And what's in the box?
The box
was
has
the
got the
avatar.
skin, yeah.
Oh,
Dandelions, I think, are outside.
Yeah, the dandelions are in the dandelions, is the recipe. I think there's also a greeting if it's the first time you've gone there, but it's not the first time many of us have gone there, so we're not getting the greeting.
oh, I could be sure to use pesticide-free dandelions.
I wonder where you would find those. Maybe.
Why don't you find some in my yard?
Yeah, stay in my yard. That's all I got.
1915. Interesting. Great job. Really, really, really good.
Can you talk a little bit about the context of the collaboration that this was presented as part of a conference? Is that what
It was the Toni Morrison Conference, and so there were high school and college teachers from around the world.
Now, where was this conference?
In Paris.
Yeah, Paris. I'm sorry, what was that?
But they came from around the world, and it was really exciting, because I thought that we might get a glimpse of Toni Morrison, but she was there all the time. And she came to a lot of the sessions. She came to our teacher sessions, where we were working with high school teachers and teaching Morrison and translation. And she was at a session where she read us 4 pages of a new work. We were the first people to hear that. But the teachers all, whether high school or college, Morrison is a difficult writer to teach because she's Faulknerian. She did her dissertation on Faulkner, and she writes that way. You know, you get all these characters up front that you have to read all the way to the end before you know what happens, and then you can start all over again, and then it makes sense. Well, if you're teaching high school students, or you're teaching our students, they're not going to read the book twice. So then there has to be some other way to get this straightened out, in a sense, to them, so that they can understand what's going on. And I'm not one of them, but Kit and a lot of the others are high-tech, online, you know, those kinds of teachers. And so this was just perfect for them, because they could use that, and you know, she'll talk more about that. But, you know, they get their students involved in, you know, these technical kinds of things. I showed this, I did this with my class I do modern literature towards the end of the semester. And they were actually so glad that there was a way that they could get that information. Those note boxes were really important to them. But they were really glad to get that information. If I were more technologically inclined, I'd probably get them on this earlier so that they could get into it before they actually got to the reading of the book. And this semester I'm doing Black Boy, and you know, that would be a really good one to put on Second Life. Sorry, Davey, I know you don't want to hear that. It's a lot of work, but.
So the conference was physically in Paris,
Right.
but then they also had the room, the areas in Second Life where there were things going on at the same time?
What they did, no, it was like a normal conference. There were, but what they did that I really appreciated was every day the conference would be in a different part of the city. So when we did ours, we were at the university. So we had, you know, that kind of setup, and at other times they were at hotels, and so they were different places across the city. But and we were in like the library, and they couldn't find the projector and the internet.
Yeah,
They couldn't even get into Second Life just for their presentation.
Oh,
Right.
It was.
And there were 2 sessions on Second Life that I understand because lots of people told me that ours was the best. And all of those people who were like critical of Second Life as a teaching tool, we didn't hear any of that criticism. They were all really excited about the way this works.
So how did you present it if they couldn't access
Well,
Second Life there? Did you?
Marzia had given us some flash drives of this as a movie, and they had made them on movie flash drives. So we were able to get in and show the movie of Second Life, but we couldn't like do the interaction stuff, and we didn't have music. But they were able to get in and see and go to.
And it was on a laptop. We had 40 people
Yeah.
trying to look over your shoulder at a laptop with no sound. So professionally, it was quite disappointing to be able to put so much time into a project and not have a projector, and simple things at JCCC would have been just right on it.
But intellectually and emotionally, though, I thought it was really rewarding that
Yes.
even with just what we had, people were really excited and enthralled. You
Right.
know? And it's like if they had the whole thing, you know, we would have blown it up. But they were really excited with just what we were able to show. And she's right; they all just crowded around, and they kind of like took turns coming back and forth so that they could see, you know, what was on the screen. And we heard lots of they were
Yeah,
excited.
I know that.
We knew there was so much more, but they didn't know.
But Second Life, it takes a long time to get comfortable with it, and I just hope that in the future, we'll see more of this, or our people at the conference might be willing to experiment and go in, because I think it's a great idea.
And it's a good way to reach students. You know,
All fun.
they like this. They like technical stuff to begin with, and then this was fun, and then they like that. It's better than, I think if they went to this first, then we wouldn't hear so many complaints about reading the book, because they would have all this background information.
Right.
Yeah, I really think with Richard Wright and Black Boy having, something, a site there, would make it a lot easier for students. It's a great teaching tool. You know, for me, it was just like, okay, if I can get my avatar to move, that's all I really care about, Kid and Saul and Davey and Marcia, they're into all of the depth things and stuff, right?
I don't walk as well as Saul does.
Once I learned how to
Fall off
fly,
the
I was
tree.
kind of cool. It's like, oh, I just hit F
Yeah.
and it'll go. But it was really, really well received.
Well, thank you.
And it was fun. I know it was a lot of hard work for you guys, but
Can you show them the greenhouse just briefly?
Yeah, we could,
I know you're probably out of time.
no, actually,
So
little bit
What
of
are
time
these
left.
walkways?
That eventually is going to be a set of paths that run between the pieces of the project. So
Oh, they will
from the-
connect up?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the unfinished parts.
And the other house that was on the left is Sula.
Look at that briefly, it's also not done.
And that has 2 stories.
Okay. One of them has steps and I never could get my avatar up and down the stairs.
There will be steps instead of
Yeah.
a ramp. And this, this is intentionally cramped and sort of hard to see where you're going, because that matches the house that it's actually supposed to model. And the layout for it was sort of pulled out from the descriptions in the book
Mhm.
by Professor Amital's students, who made floor plans and everything, which I then tried to follow, and had to adjust some because you notice, unless you're yourself an architect, there are things you don't realize have to line up, between the floors and between the walls and stuff. So but eventually these will be finished. They'll have proper surfaces and they'll have furniture. And
And
it has 3 floors, I think.
As professors,
Might be
the most we,
easier before the sun.
what?
Force of where?
It's midday.
It is.
It is, oh, okay.
We really want students to be
Amazing.
engaged
You could put
with the
advertisement
text.
there if you want.
So these students who created this space were completely engaged in this text, to the point of looking through for descriptions, and it really was a great alternative to writing a paper. This is an experience that I'm sure they won't forget.
And there's an upstairs with a secret room. Like I said, I very much look forward to the time to finishing this, because it was very interesting. As much as now I've lost. I don't know how to get back out.
See, I couldn't get up and
Let's
down.
see.
Piccola will help you.
There we go. There's the stair.
Jump.
And
So-
then
Can we access them?
yes, but you'll need an account with Second Life. The website is at secondlife.com, and you can set up an account with this big orange button. It's free. There's an option to pay for the account. You just say you don't want to do that, and then once you have it,
They send
You
you
could come.
newsletters and updates and
if you want,
all
yes.
kinds of stuff.
Then
Is
you
the
too can
island
come in.
now,
Is the
I haven't messed around with Second Life in almost 3 years. But originally, I know that there are a variety of islands that were not open. I don't think Johnson County's was open to the entire public at the time.
There was a period early on when it was closed, unless you were on the allowed list, but it's open now.
Nice mountain.
So you just you identify by your email address, and how do you?
You'll need an email address to set up the account, because they'll confirm that you're a real person that way. But you get to pick your name. It used to be you had to have a first name and a last name, and the last name you chose off the list. But they've opened that up now, so you
That existed between blacks and whites in this book, and there's just really a lot to explore.
The other things I wanted to show you, first of all, this is one of our longer term installations. This is Paul DeSelle's work, It's a whole collection of basically virtual lab systems and simulations of different biological systems, a lot of cell biology.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And every time I come back here and look, he's added something more to it. There are little creatures that are wandering around that are the output of some of these systems. That's not what I thought it would do.
Flying around.
But they are interactive. I see he's built walls around it. That's cool.
He's learned how to build. That's
Oh yeah, no, he's been working in Second Life longer than we have.
wow.
Yeah,
And-
he's not only built them, he scripted them himself, so.
Right. So these, you put in information and it outputs as if you've done an experiment. There are all kinds of complicated things to it. I still have not had the time to go through and can't clear that anymore. Oh well.
So, I was
Yes.
I know from Paul's side that he takes a lot of photographs. I mean, he's able then to use some, like maybe trees, those have been any of his photographs, or is it from a library someplace else?
Here?
Yeah, I think there's a green panel that just looked like a photograph of something, or, I think I saw it. I just,
There's so much
there.
here.
Does he incorporate?
That could be one of his
photographs and
own
stuff?
photographs, I don't
That can
know.
be done.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The other thing that's more recent is, if I can find my way out here, this whole corner of the island we turned over to an anthropology class. And basically they were divided into 3 groups. It was Sandra Moran's class in the fall. And over the course of the semester, the groups were required to sort of build a model of a village or other small grouping as living in different models, different kinds of terrain, different parts of the world, different kinship systems. And so the students had to make accounts if they didn't have them, come in and find. They did some building of their own, but most of these are objects that they found that are free, other people have made in Second Life, that they could take copies of and use to build there. And this is only what it looked like at the end of the class. Along the way, it looked completely different. It was more complicated. At one point, there were more trees. One of them had this sort of spear palisade thing, sort of guarding their land from each other. That was part of the problem. This was a first-time project for Sandra, and there wasn't a whole lot of time to get ready for it last semester. She had the idea she wanted to do. She came to us. She said, "Can we do this?" We said, "Yes, this is something that we could do. We'd help you set up, but it would take, we couldn't have it ready for you this semester." And she said, "Well, what if you just set aside the space and we kind of muddled through it along the way?" And we said, "Yeah, we can do that." And so there were a lot of things that she didn't think of and I didn't think of ahead of time. And I set the space aside, and then the students, they were divided into 3 groups, which I didn't know. And so they were all trying to use the same piece of land. And every piece of land in Second Life can only carry so many objects. It has a carrying capacity. And that meant that they were all competing for the same resources, basically, which wound up teaching them an unexpected lesson about, how different cultures manage scarce resources, but and conflict and that sort of thing, which is sort of interesting, but not not part of the plan. There were also some technical difficulties. Carmelita mentioned that everybody has different skill levels starting out with this. But what was interesting to me was that there's an expectation of traditional college-age students of having these enormously well-developed technical skills. They do in very narrow areas, and some of the students just took right to this. Some of them, and unfortunately they all seem to wind up in a group together, had major problems, and they were very unhappy as a result with having to do this, and they felt like they didn't get all that much out of it, whereas the other two groups seemed to have a great time. And they and she thought that they learned a lot from putting these together, and having them to work with as they explored what they were learning in the class.
And Saul, do you know what her approach was in class to getting those students up to speed? I mean, did she spend a lot of time in class, or did she send them off to a lab outside?
She had us give the students an introductory orientation to Second Life, which we don't normally get any contact with students. So that was a sort of a nice variation. But they didn't, I think, because I didn't know exactly what it was she had in mind for them, the orientation wasn't really targeted at what they probably would have most benefited to learning. And she did kind of leave them to their own devices beyond that. And that's something else that would change in the future, is to eliminate that as an aspect of the, because they're not in an anthropology class to learn in the second life. So, or certainly not to struggle with it over the course of a semester and not learn anthropology because of that. So that's something that would have to be addressed in the future. But yeah, towards the end of the semester, the other thing was, that it hadn't occurred to me, they only had access to build and collect objects in this one corner of the island, but once they had placed the objects on the ground, they could then push them out of the space that I had allotted to them onto the island proper. And that way, doing that not only gave them more space to work with, but it also freed up their allotment of objects. And so it was starting to grow off to the side, and that's why I dug this trench around so that they'd have a very clear, a very clear sense of where the lines were. And this is
Put some alligators or crocodiles.
I'm surprised they didn't come up with a bridge, you know?
Well, yeah, they could have done that. It was kind of late. I wonder what that is. Some kind of volcanic moonscape.
Very exciting.
Great job, thank you guys.
So, any questions about Second Life and what might happen?